If you thought that Supreme Court ruling about New York meant gun control issues were over, think again. Before we talk about that, we have a gun giveaway going on. It's happening right now. It is absolutely free, but it ends really soon. Click on the link in the description to learn which brand new gun you could win. Okay, folks, we all jumped up and down and did our little happy dance. Should I do that now? That's the Supreme Court said New York's gun law was unconstitutional. They couldn't be a may issue state. You didn't have to prove your need for a firearms permit. But you know what that did? That just opened up a whole bunch of other ways that these anti-gun states and anti-gun politicians could come after gun ownership. Now the big question is, where will we be allowed to carry our guns? Because now the Supreme Court says, yes, you got to issue those permits. You cannot force people to prove a need to implement their right to carry a gun to defend themselves. And all of these people who hate guns and want the USCCA out of business and want everybody who carries a gun to be in jail, all of those people are now racking their brains to come up with other ways to restrict firearms carry. They can't restrict ownership. They can't restrict who gets a permit now. So now they're trying to restrict where we can carry guns. And they're calling these sensitive locations. There's already a list of sensitive locations out there. Do you realize that it is a federal felony to carry a firearm into a post office? And we've all heard the term going postal, and that's why they made this a federal felony, because there was a couple of shootings at post offices. But statistically speaking, post offices are less likely than other areas to fall victim to violence when people use firearms. So it doesn't make any sense. People are just chasing the emotion, not the logic of what's happening. And anti-gunners now are so angry about the Supreme Court decision that they are trying anything to restrict where you can carry guns now. All of these states, which were made shall issue states by this Supreme Court ruling, are now trying to put other impediments in the way of where you can carry your guns. So if you think that Supreme Court ruling meant that the gun debate was over, nope, it just heated it up. Now, you need to be even more politically involved, you need to be even more politically aware, and you need to be even more politically active to understand and pay attention to where and how these anti-gun politicians are trying to restrict your freedom. You need to speak up, you need to become involved, and you need to make sure that you know what's happening with your elected representatives from the school board all the way up to your national representatives, because there are discussions at every level of politics about firearms and where you can carry them and what can be done with them. Some school boards are now moving and voting to allow teachers and other staff members to carry guns. Get involved with that. Support that kind of stuff. That's good stuff. Some state groups, state legislatures, and other, let's call them activists, are now trying to put further barriers in the way of where you can carry guns by claiming that certain areas are sensitive and should be off limits to where you are allowed to carry your gun. My question to that is there any place where you should not be allowed to defend your life? Is there any place that a criminal, someone with criminal intent who wants to take what you have by force and doesn't care what happens to you when they do that, is there any place where a criminal will say, well, that's a sensitive area, I'm not going to go there and commit a crime, so therefore you shouldn't carry a gun in that sensitive area? No, criminals don't have boundaries, they don't follow rules, and they certainly do look for unarmed and defenseless victims. So we have to make sure that we're pushing back against these actions, that we are trying to stop these politicians from declaring sensitive areas and further restricting where we can carry guns. The Supreme Court says we have the right to own them, we have the right to carry them, and now the states and different anti-gun politicians are trying to put further restrictions on where we can carry them and what we can do with them. We already know that you can only use your firearm to stop an imminent deadly threat, an imminent threat that you reasonably believe will cause death or great bodily harm. That's when we use guns for self-defense. If people use guns for any other reason, that's a crime. They should be prosecuted. They should go to prison. That's all there is to it. But if you use your gun legally, you should have nothing to worry about. So you should be able to carry your gun anywhere you want to, and the question should be how you use it, not where you carry it. Because if you don't have criminal intent, if you are not out there committing crimes, you're not doing anything wrong. That's a Fourth Amendment issue. Police officers can't just walk up to you and say, "You look like you might commit a crime." Nope. They have to have reasonable suspicion that you are committing or right about to commit a crime before they can even make contact with you. So all of these new restrictions, they're not laws yet, they're just suggestions. That could be an infringement on your Fourth Amendment rights. And that's why we've always said that the Second Amendment protects all the other amendments, because without it, without that ability, that last-ditch effort to stop tyranny, all of the other amendments just go away, because there's no way that we can eventually, if we need to, as a last resort, fight back against that. So when people want to restrict your Second Amendment rights, they're probably also going to restrict your First Amendment rights, your Fourth Amendment rights, your Fifth Amendment rights. The Third Amendment has something to do with quartering troops, and if they're making troops live in your house, then we're really in a bad situation. But think about all those other amendments which just fall by the wayside when people ignore the Second Amendment. Stay active, stay involved in politics, and keep fighting for the Second Amendment. As soon as it goes away, all the other ones will fall in short order. Do you carry with a round in the chamber? Because if you don't, you need to watch this video right next to me, because it's dangerous not to, and I'll explain why. Yes, you should carry with one in the chamber.